Hi class, this is your instructor Megan, and to kick off the semester, I want to introduce you to a framework that might help you think about web design and usability and understand the relationship between web design and usability. The first thing I want to do though is talk a little bit about why this is a difficult class. This is a difficult class for me to put together because web design is actually a really big field. A lot of people have this idea that one person makes a website. They draw it up and then they design it in Photoshop and then they program it and make it live on the web and then they maintain it. And there are people who do that. It happens. But websites typically are made by groups of people who have their own special abilities and interests and things that they look at. So I want to talk a little bit about those. And that's going to help us arrive at what kind of web design you're doing in this class. Because I can tell you right now, you're not really doing back-end programming. I want to talk about each one of these. So front-end programmers, these are people who make what you see on the browser work. So a designer, a visual designer, will sort of mock up, here's what the site should look like, the logo goes here, this has a red textured background, so on and so forth. Of course, they'll get that from the interface designer, so we'll get there. But the front-end programmer makes that real. So they get, here's what it should look like, and they actually make it real so that it works online, the buttons work and do things, that kind of stuff. The back-end programmer takes care of programming that you don't see. So if, for example, you go to a site that sells shoes and you can fill in some text boxes, it asks you what size of shoe do you wear, what kind of shoes do you like, do you like these certain colors, maybe it shows you 10 shoes and it says pick the ones you like the best, and then you click submit and it gives you suggestions for shoes to buy. The system that's making that all happen, that's getting the information from you and understanding it and giving you suggestions, would be built by the back-end programmer typically. So to the user, it just looks like magic. To the back-end programmer, it looks like a lot of databases and things we're not going to get into in this course. You might also have a user experience designer who is concerned with sort of the qualitative experience of the site. What's it like to be a user to come to the site? Is it pleasurable to be on the site, or is it a nightmare? What should it be? This person sort of figures out, here's what the experience should be like. This should be a relaxing experience, or this should be an educational experience. An interaction designer is similar. This is a term you've probably seen in your introductory course if you've taken 101. Interaction design is very similar to user experience design, but more concerned with testing and trying to understand if what is supposed to be made is what's actually being communicated and made for the user. Interface designers are concerned with the specific elements of a web design. So, for example, a menu bar. If you have across the top of your page a menu bar, the interface designer has to figure out, is it vertical or is it horizontal? Let's say it's vertical. Okay, what happens when you hover over one of the buttons? Do you go somewhere or does something drop down? Okay, let's say there's a drop down. Now, is the drop down vertical or is the drop down horizontal? Does it have pictures in it or not have pictures in it? Let's say it has no pictures in it and it's horizontal, okay? So now I see something else in that drop down I want to click, so I hover my mouse over it and I'm about to click it. Now what happens? Does it turn into a different color? Does it get a drop shadow? Does a picture pop up? These are all the concerns of an interface designer, and we're going to do a little bit of interface design in this class because we have to make a website. Graphic designer is concerned with the visuals of a website. So a lot of times what will happen is the interface designer will design the interface and they won't use any color, they won't use specific images, they'll use wireframes and they'll just sort of draw out, this should be a picture, this should be a button. When you click the button, it should do this. And then the graphic designer will get that and they'll add visuals to it to make it more exciting and more visually pleasing. So the graphic designer is working more with choosing colors, choosing typefaces, creating background textures. And again, you're going to do a little bit of that in the class because we have to make a website. You might also have a content strategist involved. This is a person who would be concerned with what the website says. So what content goes on it and where should it go on the website? So building a website is hard. It can involve a lot of different specialties and knowledge of a lot of different areas. It's possible to make a website by yourself, to do all of these things yourself. We cannot do that in a 16-week course. I'm not sure we could do it in like this semester and summer semester because some of these things are really hard if you don't have experience in them. I can tell you right now, back-end programming, I cannot do it. Databases escape my realm of experience and knowledge. I know what they are. I understand how they're used. I cannot make one. I cannot create functions that call to them. I don't even know if that's the right sentence. I don't know anything about them other than what they do and like how to set one up for WordPress. So we're going to do some of this stuff, but we're not going to do all of it. We're going to focus on some of these aspects, but in order to kind of help you understand what we're focusing on, I'm going to tell you about a framework that will help you kind of figure out what we're doing here. I'm going to talk to you about the Vitruvian framework, and you may actually have heard of Vitruvius, who wrote the Vitruvian Principles that I'm talking about, because one of the characters in the Lego movie was named Vitruvius. So if you guys saw the Lego movie, then you saw sort of a modern representation of Vitruvius. What you may not have known is that Vitruvius was a Roman architect, and he probably didn't invent the design principles I'm going to talk about, but he did write them down, which in Roman times was a big deal. You know, most people couldn't write. So he didn't invent them, but he wrote them down, and so he gets credited with these principles I'm about to discuss. That's also why in the Lego movie you see him wearing this sort of like Greek toga thing, because Vitruvius was a Roman. So Vitruvius wrote down, possibly had some hand in making, 3 principles for design. Here's the thing though, he was specifically talking about architecture, but this is a great framework for websites because at the end of the day, a website is not that different from a building, and I'm going to explain to you why. There's 3 Vitruvian principles: Utilitas, Firmitas, and Venustas. And Venustas comes from Venus, the goddess of love and beauty. Venustas. So the first is Utilitas, and this is the functionality of a design. And Vitruvius was talking about architecture. What is a building supposed to be for, and can you do that in the building? With a website, that's sort of what is the website supposed to do, and can you do it on the website? This is often performed by the user interface or user experience designer with a focus on how the website behaves and meeting user goals. Firmitas, the structural durability of the design. So are the materials durable? In architecture, this means like, are we using wood or are we using stone here? Does the structure perform? If the structure is supposed to be walked over by 1 million people a year, we probably shouldn't build it out of matchsticks. It's not an appropriate material. This is often on the hands of programmers who have to determine the best language or platform to use to make the site. At the same time, you can think about Firmitas as being the structure of the page, which an interface designer might create. Websites are really just sequences of squares, which I'll show you in a minute, and that is the structure of the website. What's first, the logo or the menu? Then what? Then what? All the way down the page. Venustas is the visual aesthetics and beauty of a building. This is obvious. There's some campus buildings that are not very beautiful that don't have a lot of Venustas, and there are some that have a lot of Venustas. I'm in art and journalism building right now. It's very beautiful. It's not the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It has some Venustas. This is often crafted by the graphic designer after the functionality and the structure are taken care of. So for a website, it's the same thing. Is the website beautiful? Do the visuals of the website enhance my experience and endear it to me? So let's look at some examples. Now, Vitruvius, of course, was talking about architecture, so let's look at architecture examples first. Utilitas, usability and usefulness. This is the Sydney Opera House. It's a very beautiful building, but what is it? It's an opera house. So if this design is not acoustically sound, then this is not a very good building. This is not a good design, and Vitruvius would tell us, no, this is not right. A good design has Utilitas, Firmitas, and Venustas. If this building didn't have good acoustics, it wouldn't have good Utilitas. It wouldn't accomplish what it's supposed to accomplish. Fortunately, of course, it does, so this is a very successful design. Also, it has Firmitas and Venustas. The Leaning Tower of Pisa. Structural durability, not so much. This is an interesting building because the building itself is actually structurally durable. It has lasted for hundreds of years. It's the foundation that is not structurally durable. It's the foundation that lacks Firmitas. And as a result, the Utilitas is affected. because the structure of the foundation is not good, you can't really use this building in any significant sense. It's falling over. And in fact, it has been corrected over the years to correct the tilt and keep it from falling all the way over. So eventually, if that correction hadn't been done, this tower would just fall over. It would be unsafe to be in, so it would have no utility, no utilitas, and it would be unsuccessful as a design. Venustas, aesthetic beauty. The Taj Mahal is a very, very beautiful building. It has Venustas. And if it accomplishes its goal, which in this case is to be a palace and to impress all the people around it, then it does that. And it also has Firmitas, so the structure is going to last for a long time and the layout of the rooms makes sense for what it is. Then it is well designed according to the Vitruvian framework. So let's take a look at these as web design aspects. So the utilitas of a website would be the usability, which is why we're not just learning web design, but also usability. Usability and usefulness. So this is a site, kayak.com. The point is to help me find the cheapest or most convenient fare. I might have a different purpose to using the site than someone else. Maybe I'm trying to find the cheapest fare, but someone else is trying to find the one with the least stops. If I can do that, this site is usable and it has good utilitas. One site that I always think is great is Craigslist. I used to really hate Craigslist and I would complain all the time, they need a graphic designer. But you know what? I don't think they do. The point is to help me buy or sell stuff. So if I can do that, then the site is usable. This site has utilitas. It doesn't have a lot of Venustas. It's not super ugly, but it's not the greatest. It could have better beauty, but for what it is, I think it's actually pretty good. I don't want to see ads. I don't want to see pictures all over this. I actually think it works. But this site, regardless of how you feel about its Venustas, maybe you disagree with me, regardless of how you feel about that, it has good utilitas. I need to be able to buy and sell stuff in my specific town. I can do that here. Firmitas, structural durability. You guys are probably all very familiar with the healthcare.gov fiasco. Healthcare.gov, it turns out, was not structurally durable. It didn't work. The technology behind the site, the programming that is used, has to allow the site to work as intended. And in that case, it didn't. This is a screenshot somebody took. They tried to use the site and everything went haywire and they got this instead. Most people, it was reported at one time that most people who went to the site couldn't actually follow the steps all the way to the end to get the result they were looking for. So the structure failed here. The technology behind it failed. You might also think about structural durability as the structure of the website in terms of the boxes that it's made of. Websites are just boxes. They're boxes inside other boxes, stacked on top of other boxes. So does the structure of the site make sense and stay consistent? So here's the Ball State website. You can see I've outlined the boxes. Here they are. It's just boxes. But they have to make sense, the order that they're in. The stuff I use the most should be at the top, so all the buttons are at the top. The stuff I use the least should be at the bottom because people don't look at the bottom of websites. And so we've got like the copyright information, stuff I don't care about down at the bottom. Here's another example. Nike, significantly higher in Venustas than the Ball State website. But the structure, again, it makes sense. We've got the most important stuff in boxes at the top, and we've got less important stuff in boxes down at the bottom. But it's just boxes stacked on top of each other. And of course, Venustas, is the site beautiful? And I'm going to make you guys read a book chapter called Attractive Things Work Better. Yes, if you've had me before, I've made you read it before. It's a very good piece of writing to sort of defend the discipline of design. It's a piece about how things that are perceived as beautiful are actually perceived as having higher usability. So Vitruvius said that there's 3 principles here: usability, structural durability, and aesthetic beauty. But you know what? They're not separate. If something has aesthetic beauty like this website does, it can actually increase the usability. So all of these concepts are related to each other. They're not 3 completely different things. Something that is Venustas can also appear to have more utilitas. At the same time, something that has good Firmitas can appear to have more utilitas as well. So these 3 concepts are all related. And what I'm going to have you do for an assignment this week is read some basic principles of web design, and I'm going to have you tell me which of these categories you think each principle fits in. So if one principle is that typography should be hierarchical, where headlines are larger than body copy, is that Utilitas? Is it Venustas? Or is it Firmitas? So this is actually an assignment that's a little harder than it looks. But consider how they relate to each other. There may be some where it's difficult to say that just one of these principles, Vitruvian principles, applies. But this is going to help us think about web design. So throughout this class, we're going to look at Firmitas, the structure of the site, the HTML that makes the site work, the WordPress system that makes the site work. We're going to look at Venustas, the colors and typography and images that we put on the website, and the Utilitas. Your final project is going to be to test your site and see if it's usable.